Alright, so here we go. This replay was called Second Zerg Loss, which totally lets us know what's going to happen. So, ooh, you missed an SCV for half a second there because you were chasing a drone, but I forgive you. This gas is pretty early. I wonder what you're doing. Is this going to be mech? Is it going to be mech? Kind of feels mechy to me. Zumecky. Zumekian. Yep. Looks mechy. So factory before command center. Not very expandy. And not using the factory the second it's done. It looks like you're going to swap it and open reactor Hellion. Okay, so this is going to be reactor Hellion before command center with the Marauder. This is a very typical Terran opening. There's two ways to do this opening. There's 13 gas factory then command center, and then there's the way that I do it, which is the 15 gas command center and then factory. The way you're doing it is going to give you 4 Hellions really quickly if you remember to build that third depot. But I don't know if okay, you're gonna have the third depot in time. And the advantage of that is that you can ring around the rosies behind his mineral line if you get four Hellions super quick. But he built this stupid thing here specifically because, you know, it's a good way to stop that from happening. So the whole point of going factory before command center is to get 4 Hellions super quick, because 4 Hellions super quick is a lot scarier than 2 Hellions at a reasonable time. And you're not doing what this build is meant for, so you basically cut a little bit of economy, probably 3 workers or so, in order to give yourself this factory quick enough to get 4 Hellions, and then you didn't get 4 Hellions, and even once you got a third Hellion, you're not really using the Hellions for anything. So I would recommend against doing this build unless you plan to use those 4 Hellions to try to do damage. And I don't know that you should really be trying to use those Hellions to do damage, because that's a really micro-intensive thing that's going to pull you away from your macro. So I don't like your choice of openings, is what I'm saying. The general theme of Marauders and Hellions is a great theme to start with, and then you can add transition from that into mech like you're doing. But I just think you got the reactor super quick and the factory super quick specifically because that gives you the quick 4 Hellions. You didn't get quick 4 Hellions, and even now you have all these Hellions. These Hellions are basically dead. If you keep them up here, you can just plant roaches right there and say, "Oh, your Hellions are never going to get away." That's a silly place to keep your Hellions. Sitting at the watchtower is okay. The point of early Hellions is to give you map control until the 11-minute mark or so, when you can get either mutas or infestors. And I don't know, I don't really feel like it's worth it. I don't feel like you're gaining the map control that Hellions were designed to give you. I mean, you kind of do. I mean, he hasn't taken his third, so you know, Hellions achieved. So at 10 minutes, we want you to have at least 44 workers. Let's see how many you've got. Hey, 43, not bad. The command center into Hellion build gives you 48, and the Hellion into command center build gives you 44. So you did the Hellion into CC build, and you had 44 workers, so that's great. You did perfect on the worker front. But yeah, I would take the other build over this one because it would give you 4 more workers. It looks like you have 2 idle workers, and you're getting close to supply blocking here. Armory's started. You've got 3 command centers, and you're starting to build up your tank force now. Starting tanks this late, I don't think you're going to be ready to do anything aggressive in time to stop his third, because most Zergs... Well, first let's look at your muted defenses, right? No muted defenses. You don't have a single unit that can shoot up. You have 2 Marines, 3 Marines that can shoot up, and nothing else. And 10 minutes is a very common time to get hit by mutas. So I would say you either want to have a Thor by 10 minutes, or you want to open with like 20 Marines instead of 3, or you want to get like lots of turrets, like turret here and here and here and here and here before 11 minutes. And getting that many turrets is expensive, especially if the Zerg doesn't end up going mutas. So it's a lot cheaper just to get a Thor and then never have to really build more than 2 turrets because you have the Thor. So you are starting turrets and you are making 2 of them.
Research.
But all the way at 12 minutes, if he comes to meet us now, it would be very sad. Because right here, no muted defense, no muted defense here. So also we're getting up towards when you need to start your third. You've got 53 workers, which is, you're right now max saturation on 2 bases. So there's 2 ways to play it from here. You can cut at 52, which is what it looks like you're doing. And that's great because that'll allow you to get a really big army from here. But it's very kind of timing attacky. It's very all in. It's very, if you cut at 52 workers, then it's just like a Zerg who opens with a giant army. He's opening with a giant army so that he can deny your third. And that's the point of opening with 52 workers and cutting there. So it looks like you're not intending to, or maybe you are intending to cut. I don't know. You started workers and then canceled them again. I guess that's just you realizing that you wanted to cut. Again, leaving the Hellions out on the field, they're almost always going to just get surrounded and die when you leave them out on the field, unless you're constantly staring at them. And honestly, I don't think you should expect yourself to be aware enough to constantly stare at your Hellions. It's too hard to macro and constantly stare at Hellions. So you're undersaturated on 2 bases, even though you have more workers than you need to fully saturate. This feels a little weird. Feels a little weird to have so many workers out with your army and to not have been making workers for such a long time. And to have 5 workers on this gas. And it looks like this worker has just been idle for a really long time. I don't know. Kind of confused by what you're doing here. You don't have blue flame. You don't have any upgrades off of your armory. And you're pushing out so early. The mech gets stronger and stronger the bigger your tank count gets, right? Because 3 tanks are kind of crap, but 10 tanks are ridiculously scary. And they're not 3 times scarier than 3 tanks. They're majillions of times scarier. So it's really uncommon to see what you're doing now. It's not common to see this because it's just not a very good idea. Also, he hasn't taken his third. Your goal of not letting him take his third has been achieved without even having to push out. You don't need to be doing this. So I'm pretty worried that he's almost pure roach and you only have 4 tanks. And this isn't because you didn't make a big army. You did. You made a very big army. You made an army as big as his, which is a hard thing to do in TVZ. In general, the Zerg should have a bigger army than you, and you have a bigger army than him. So that's a major macro achievement. You've done a great job with your macro. But mech is a critical mass style, just like Infestor Broodlord, right? Or if you make 2 Broodlords and you attack someone, they're just going to die. They're crap. What's scary is, 6 Infestors, 10 Corruptors, and 4 Broodlords. You got to have the things to support them. So 4 tanks are not scary, but 10 tanks would have been scary, especially with him attacking through a choke like this. Your tanks are going to get to do absolutely optimal, the best damage in the universe, but you don't have very many of them. You only have 4, so really scary. This fight doesn't look like it's going to go well unless he does something ridiculously stupid. So yeah, just kind of ripping you up. And look how clumped together his roaches have been. Roaches have such a short range that people like to stutter step them, and every time you give a move command to someone as part of a stutter step, they clump up. So tanks are great against roaches for that reason. And he's gonna kick this army's butt. Now, he's not coming out way ahead in this engagement or anything, but the thing is you just lost 3 tanks, and I was just saying how 3 tanks aren't very strong, but 10 are. The more tanks you lose, 1 at a time, even if he trades inefficiently in order to kill your tanks, if he can keep your tank count low, he can keep going roaches forever. But once you have, 15 tanks and you siege them up right here, he has to cede this ground. So another thing to worry about is that with a mech army, the things that are standard, like totally standard against mech, burrowed roaches coming up underneath your tanks will just completely end the game. If he does that, you're out. And this guy has burrow and he has burrow move. But even if you didn't, the fact that he has more than 0 roaches should indicate to you that that's a possibility, and you should always get a raven and just keep it with your army. The other things are roach drops or nidus, and you're not, I don't know. You can't even see your whole base. It costs you nothing to put a supply depot there and make sure that he can't nidus. And the last thing is broodlords, right? And you don't have any starports at all. So I'm okay with not having any starports at all. I feel like it is a good build to max out on 200 unit space of mech and then just go steamroll him without any air units. But you need to be maxing out at 14 and a half minutes. And you just weren't anywhere close to that. And I don't think that's because your macro slipped up. I think it's because you attacked before you really let your... So the army supply graphs... they tend not to just be a straight line. They tend to have like an upward slope at the end. And that upward slope usually begins at 12 minutes. So from 5 minutes until 8 minutes, you're getting $500 of army a minute. And then from 8 minutes till 10 minutes, you get $750 a minute. And then from 10 minutes until 12 minutes, you get like $1,000 a minute. But then once you're at 12 minutes, you have 5 factories. You have all the way up to 200 unit space of supply depots. And you're just constantly producing Thors and Hellions, which are the most... money eating. I don't know how to say that. Like they use the most money per factory of anything. So you just jump at 12 minutes. You jump from like 120 unit space up to 200 unit space in the next 2 minutes. So those 2 minutes when you no longer have to make depots, no longer have to make SCVs, and you have all your factories, and you already have a ton of tanks, and now you're just producing Thors and Hellions. That's when this build really skyrockets and just shoots you up to 200 unit space. And it feels like you got to that point and then didn't milk it. You didn't make troops from that point before attacking. You just went out and attacked with what you had. And yeah, it's not good, man. It's not good. Also, mech is a crazy gas intensive strategy, and you're not really getting gas, your third and fourth gas, until 10 minutes, and you didn't even fully saturate them yet. Okay, now you did. So you're really pretty gas light for someone who's going for an almost entirely gas based build. Also, I'm not sure why you wanted to get stim. When you're making one factory of marauders, it's not worth the $200 investment to give stim to 3 marauders. You know, like you're not going bio and mech, you're just going mech. So don't research any infantry upgrades. Not a good plan. Mining efficiency, I believe, has been pretty poor this whole time, but we can prove it with math. Man, I haven't done it yet. So we got 168 or 80 plus 464, and we got to subtract whatever you got from mules, which is 3 minus 320 minus 160, and divide that by 40. So you have a 41 worker mining efficiency, but you have 55 workers. And that just, that comes from having 3 idle workers. It comes from having more workers at your main than you do at your natural. And it comes from having a bunch of workers just off with your army, kind of hanging out. So yeah, I really dislike the what you did here, moving out with these troops. And it's okay to move out with these troops and kill those lings, but you could have done that with these Hellions without losing a single troop, as long as you kited. And even if you wanted to bring your whole army, don't bring all these workers, man, because you don't have enough workers that having some of them be idle is worth your while. So you are getting Blue Flame. It's not done yet. Moving out before crucial upgrades are done is always another huge mistake. But your army size is it's supposed to be skyrocketing right now. You're supposed to be cutting workers. You're supposed to have a 2,500 income, and instead you have a 1,600. So your income is way smaller than it should be right now. And you don't have enough supply depots to really skyrocket your army size. And you're pushing out with 3 tanks. Like, mech is very reliant on having a high tank count. And one of the most common ways to lose with mech is to lose your tanks, and then you just can't keep your third secured anymore, because it takes a lot of tanks to have 1 tank here, 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 and some army with 2 tanks in here. I mean, just to defend your 3 bases, it takes like 8 tanks. So to have 8 tanks and enough more tanks to be able to move out, or to take all your tanks and push out while reinforcing those 8 tanks, you gotta have a really big tank count before you can really do anything with mech. So yeah, I feel like your macro is good. but you pulled too many workers away from what they should have been doing. You kind of cut workers a lot when you hit 52, and then decided to get third and fourth CC anyway, which seems kind of weird. Mech is very, let's secure our ground hardcore, like really secure our bases and then take a third, and then really secure that fourth and then take a fourth, and so on and so forth. Mech wants to do a slow push from 2 base to 3 base to 4 base. You don't want to just be out there grabbing land like nuts. That's more of an infantry style of thing to do. But now that he's giving you the opportunity, I'd like to see those turn into planetaries. Again, planetaries, stim, concussive shells are all things that are taking gas away from your tank count. You want every single gas you've spent throughout the entire game to have gone towards either tanks or Thors or Siege Mode or Blue Flame, or +1 attack or +2 attack or +1 armor. You want all your gas to go towards your army is my point. So spending gas on planetary fortresses it's necessary later on, but your main isn't even close to mined out yet. It's not really necessary right now. So yeah, critical mass, man. You gotta wait for a critical mass. Again, you're going out with no tanks. Roaches rip Hellions to shreds. Hellions might as well not even exist against roaches. Roaches beat Thors hands down. They just crush Thors. I mean, Thors do. Roaches probably get like a 30% advantage or something against Thors. So if you have 30% more Thors than he has roaches, sure, your Thors can win. Or if you surround the Thors and repair them, and he doesn't have enough roaches to two-shot them, then you can win. But like, just because it's possible to win with Thors against roaches, roaches still have a huge advantage. It's just like Marauders versus roaches. Marauders crush roaches at a 20% or 30% advantage, but if he has 4 base to your 2 base and he can make 200 roaches in the time you can make 100 Marauders, then he's still going to beat you. So that's how Thors work against roaches. Siege tanks, 1 or 2 tanks, roaches rip them to shreds. 5 tanks even, roaches can beat the crap out of 5 tanks. But you get 6 or 7 or 8 or 9 tanks and you put stuff in front of them and they will tear roaches to shreds. So really the strength of a mech versus Zerg build is your siege tank count, and you're not getting enough siege tanks, and that's just, I'm not surprised you're losing this game, even though you're doing great at spending money. You've spent as much money as him, which again is very rare for a TVZ, and you know he hasn't gotten a 4th, and you're denying his 4th and whatever. But his army is just, look, his army is even smaller than yours, but just composition wise, pure roach, especially with burrow and burrowed move, is going to do pretty well against mech unless you have a reasonable tank count. Unless or until. So again, roaches against Thors with no tank support. The Thors die and you kill like 1 roach in exchange for a $500 Thor. $100 roach for a $500 Thor is a really bad trade. And these lings run by and prevent you from mining your 3rd again, and blah 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 blah. This is all just basically coming down to that first push you made. If we look at army spending, you have spent $16,000, right? You can hit 200 units base of an awesome tank count with plenty of Thors and plenty of Hellions and even good upgrades for about $7,500. So you've already made 2 full 200 unit space awesome armies, but you've never had higher than 130 unit space. And it takes a good 140 unit space to sit back defensively against Mass Roach and feel comfortable. You know, you have to have 5 tanks here with 2 Thors in front of them, and then tanks covering this and tanks covering this. Because if he comes here and then backs up and comes over here, you don't want to have to move your army. You just want to say, look, I have so much defense that nothing you can possibly do will hurt me. And it's really frustrating as a Zerg player to play against mech for that reason. Like, once the Terran has more than like 10 tanks, it's really impossible to do anything useful against him. You keep getting caught with lings against your tiny army and rips it to shreds. I don't think there's anything you can do from here to catch up. So statistically, look at how much money you spent compared to him for the whole first part of the game, and say, if I've ever spent as much money as a Zerg, I should win. Zergs want to earn more money than you and then outspend you. That's the Zerg playstyle. So if you're losing to a Zerg who's got the same amount of money spent on army as you, he's countering you with position and with composition. And in this case, pure roach versus mech with, you know, a tiny bit of ling and infester harass. So yeah, get a much higher tank count before you push out. That is my advice. And start your tank production earlier and spend a higher percentage of your gas on tanks and get more gas earlier, and really leave all of your workers mining, because that's why you built them. You don't want them to be out there repairing. That's another reason why it pays off to build all the way up to 180 or 190 unit space before pushing out with mech, is that workers do synergize really well with mech, and having workers out there repairing is really good. But you don't want to pull workers that are mining away to go repair. You want to pull away workers that aren't mining. So you want to have 75 workers on 2.5 bases and say, well, 2.5 bases can't support 75 workers anyway, so it's okay that I'm pulling these workers away to go repair. You don't want to pull away workers that were doing something, because that's reducing your income, and then your army is not going to be as big as it could have. So, right here, when you've only got 2 idle workers and all of your workers are well spread out and mining, look at your income. 2,500, right? So at 12 minutes, you have a $2,500 income. You should be able to keep that $2,500 income for the rest of this period, and you don't. It drops down. So now it's like less than 2,000. Now it's like 1,600 and 1,500. So that's basically the problem. You self-destructed on income. And yeah. So I think I've said everything that needs to be said about how to mech against Zerg. Did I stop recording? Or did I just minimize the recording software? How do I make it? There we go.